Hi, I'm Ellie O'Brien, and you're watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press today. I am so happy to be joined by Ellie O'Brien. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Season two was just announced the other week, so we are so excited for you and the rest of the cast and team, and we'll dive into Walter Boys and, of course, your memorable character, Grace, in just a moment. But first off, what can you share about your background and this spark that made you passionate about the arts and wanting to pursue it as a career?
I think it was something that happened very early for me. I started acting on screen. I think I was like 9 when I did my first commercial. So I feel very lucky that I think I'm one of those people. I always knew what I wanted to do, and I was always encouraged to keep, following that dream by my parents and everybody around me. Yeah, it was just something that was very natural to me. I think some early inspo was definitely like all kids in, the early 2000s. I was just watching my little VHSs all the time, and I had one on repeat, and it was always Matilda. And I would just watch that like over and over and over again. And I think that really sparked the idea of like performance for me and like character work because I was like, she's me. Like, why am I literally her? Um, and that's funny because I think Matilda remains a pretty strong inspiration, even like up until today when I do my other behind the scenes work. But yeah, and I was always just encouraged in terms of storytelling and like my communicative abilities, I guess. Like I had a great I went to a really good school when I was a kid that had this amazing I grew up in Scotland, so she was our headmaster or like principal or headmistress, I suppose, and her name was Mrs. Tompkins, and she just was always very nurturing to me. And I think she had noticed that I really liked writing and reading. And she moved me up a grade or like a primary, I guess, when I was a kid to go and read and write with the older kids. And I was just always told that I could do it. Like, why shouldn't I be able to write and act and perform and do all the things I wanted to do? So yeah, I was very lucky and privileged in that way. And now I'm here. So, yeah.
I love that. And it always helps to have encouragement from people, like from adults in your life. And with Matilda, I imagine too, you're thinking like, here's a young actor who's doing this on a big stage. He's a lead role, and it kind of pushes you and motivates you to want to do that and aspire to act in the future. And you mentioned Scotland, so you were born, grew up there before moving to Toronto. How was that move and transition for you? Because you've got kind of two different countries, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't as hard as one might expect it to be just because of the age that I was like 10 or 11 when we moved. And it was just kind of, like I say, I always had those encouraging adults around me. And I'm also the eldest of 5 kids. So I had my 4 younger siblings like in tow. So it was never like, oh my God, I'm in this big, scary new country by myself. Like, no, there was always us. And because we always called ourselves the O'Brien clan because there was that freaking many of us. Um, so I never felt alone or like lonely or that I had to figure it out by myself. And that really helped. Um, and there's also that privilege of coming from a country where you're kind of accepted as an immigrant once you get here. Like there was never any, oh, you talk funny or anything. Like sure, there was a little bit of that, but it was always something interesting about me that people liked to hear about. So I definitely made it like a huge part of my personality. And I was like, I'm different, right? And I'm from a different country and you don't have my accent and blah, blah, blah. So it was definitely one of the best things that could have happened to me as a kid. I think just between the two countries having such different perspectives on life, I got to really engage with both of those and choose for myself what resonated. Like I think Canadians are really optimistic about the world and about life and about, they have this like, very optimistic philosophy that I don't think really quite exists in the same way in Scotland. And then Scotland has this like intense like pride and honesty to it that it's like you really pride yourself on being a working class honest person. And I think that really was a huge part of like growing into my own values as I kind of grew up in a different country. So yeah, I think I got the best of both worlds for sure. I'm very lucky that way as well.
It's really interesting, I guess, to kind of juxtapose those two kind of cultures and take parts from both. Do you still go back to Scotland, visit
Yeah.
family or?
Yeah, but maybe not necessarily as a family. It's just, there's so many of us and it's so expensive and all that jazz. But I got really lucky this summer that I signed with an agent. I signed with Miriam Hunwick Associates in Edinburgh, actually. So I get to go back a lot. I get to do auditions from back home all the time. And it's so different acting in a Scottish accent versus a Canadian or like a standard American accent. So yeah, I've gotten to engage in the kind of arts there as well recently, which has been a big change. And something I'm very, very, very thankful for. I think that to be able to have your kind of hands in both pools a little bit. It's a big help. So yeah, I'm excited to see what that brings, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of new opportunities for you, hopefully. I was gonna say, so you can kind of turn your Scottish accent on and off.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I think it's mostly because at this point I've done half my life there and half my life here, that it is quite literally split down the middle. Like I'm just as comfortable in both accents, I guess. And people people always get a shock when I like answer the phone and it's my mom, and suddenly it's like I've gone from having a conversation in like a standard American accent. I'm like, wait, what you want, mom? Like, what's going on? It's like, what is that? But I consider it like a very honest and true part of myself. So I don't know. I feel a little bit split down the middle. I think a lot of people who immigrate when their kids feel that way. Um, and I've always kind of led with the idea that neither side is more true to me than the other. It's just like I happen to have both of those little quirks, so I keep them. Yeah.
That's lovely. I mean, getting to embrace both sides doesn't hurt any doesn't hurt anybody. Yeah. And you've also, I mean, you're set to graduate actually, like you were just saying next year, you have one more semester left at Sheridan College. How have your studies been and like what are some of the major lessons that you've learned so far?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been I kind of I feel like it went really fast. I started obviously in kind of the middle of COVID, like 2020, September 2020 was um my first semester. So now that I'm kind of coming out of it a little bit, I think I've learned to have a lot more confidence in myself as a performer and as a creative person, which I think is really important. I feel confident in my ideas now that I maybe didn't before. Like I don't know, I think well, for example, my final project is a film that I wrote last year. I've been writing it for like a year, and I didn't take any of the directing classes, so I wasn't actually like qualified to direct it. But I was like, I don't know who else can direct it though. And so I wrote like really long emails and like reference letters and everything to all my professors, just being like, I am confident that I can do this. Like, please, God, let me do this. I can't hand off my baby. And like, I know that's a skill that you kind of have to learn as you go, but yeah, it was just really important to me to kind of like own the fact that I knew I could do it. And I did do it, and it went really well. So I'm very proud of it. And we're moving into post-production now in our last semester. So yeah, I think I've just learned to stand up for myself and like believe in myself as a creative person with a lot of skills, and you're valid and you're valuable. So you should, work to let other people see that, I think.
That's amazing, and I'm so happy that they let you direct your
Yeah.
your own baby. I mean, that's one of those things like with ownership, right? You're like, I'm sure there are directors out there, but you're thinking like you kind of conceptualize everything. It would be so nice to see it come from like the page to the screen. And I mean, hopefully others will get to see it. Maybe I don't know if it will just be for your fellow college students' eyes, but I'm sure other people would love to see your work. And behind the camera, both personal productions and college productions, you've worked in not only writing, producing, directing, but also casting. So tell me about like these interests, how you've really kind of cultivated them and grown them over the past few years.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, casting wasn't really something that I had considered for myself up until I think like push came to shove. And I was like, well, somebody has to cast it. And I know how it feels to be on the other end of these things. And it was kind of the same for directing. Like I was like, I know how it feels to be on the other side of direction. And I've seen enough directing in my like 10 years of acting that I feel confident in my ability to do that. And so it was kind of the same with casting. And I learned a lot about acting through casting. So that was a really, really, really cool experience just to see how different people interpret the same sides. And yeah, I think learning different people's processes or like trying to figure them out as you go through what can sometimes be like such a fleeting 5-minute audition process was really, really eye-opening. And it also made me consider all the other auditions I've done where I might have been like just like devastated that I didn't get something or like I thought I did this wrong or this wasn't right and I should have done this and I should have done that. Da, 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 da. You know, you can spend years doing that to yourself. And then I think after doing some casting, I was like, literally not an ounce of this is personal. Like literally nothing about these actors is wrong. It's just the part. It's just the material. It's just the artistic final product that you're trying to make. It's not anything to do with right or wrong. So that was very cathartic for me, I think, for sure. And I also just love it. It's just such a fun little experience. Like people are like, I'll submit for your short film. And I'm like, oh, we got a submission. Okay. So, it's like it's almost like a great serotonin boost to watch other people read something that you're passionate about and put their own creative spin on things. So yeah, I've learned a lot through casting. I think probably the most and writing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, like you're in school, it's funny because a lot of people who I talk to, they're like in school for acting, right? But you're really in school for like the creative studies part of film.
Yeah, yeah. And that was the choice I made probably like, I think back when I was like 15, I decided that like, I think acting is one of those things that it's so subjective to me and I think so personal that it almost felt wrong to um try and I guess like intellectualize it or I don't know. Like I just felt like I wanted to stay instinctual and that's not to say that there's a right or wrong way to do it either. Like I think people who go and get their degrees like probably slay very hard all the time. Like, when you have your tools, you become very confident in your craft. And I think that's important. But I just felt that I had a lot I had to learn. I knew that I wanted to be behind the camera and I knew that I had something I think to say. So I wanted to pick up the tactile skills to do that. Um, I didn't want to like throw myself into directing or writing or anything without the proper like academic background. I've always been a very academic person, so it was important to me to learn it in a formal setting. And you don't have to do that either. You don't have to go to film school, like not at all. But it was something that I felt drawn to. So yeah.
I wonder if you got to shadow a bit on the on Walter Boys, but maybe we'll talk about that. But first off, what can you share about your audition and casting process for this show?
Yeah, yeah, it was an interesting one. Like it was kind of right before the summer that I auditioned, so it was a busy time in like the industry, I guess. And I remember getting in the audition for Grace first, and it was I think it was the scene in Jackie's room with Jackie and Skylar. And Skylar's like they're both trying to make materials for like their fundraiser that's coming up and Grace is like, oh, this is so boring, guys. Like she's like, can we do something fun? Um so I think Grace just, she's the type of character where you can just go in and I just was like, let me have fun with this. I didn't think about it too hard. I just did what felt instinctually correct and sent it off and never thought about it again, like the way I always try to do. Um, and then I got a call back actually for Olivia, for the character Olivia, who's played by Abby Jacinto, who is just literally wonderful. Like she does Olivia in a very like what, like kind of almost ditzy way, which is so perfect. And I did not think about that when I was doing my audition. I did it very bitchy, like very almost Erin like. Um, so yeah, so I did that callback with Mel, with our showrunner actually, which was really interesting. I hadn't met her before, and she had this very calming presence. I think it's the accent, like she's very English. She's like, "That was beautiful, Ellie," and then she goes, "But that's not Olivia. Like the way I did it was very mean." And she goes, "Olivia's a nice girl. She's very, she's being genuine when she's talking to Jackie." And I went, "Okay." So I did it again. I think I was too nice. So I left and I was like, well, that was not it. Like that doesn't feel right. I didn't like any of that. I don't think I'm Olivia. And I didn't think I was Grace because I didn't get a call back for Grace. I was like, well, there goes that one. That would have been a fun one. Would have went to Calgary for 6 months, hung out with some friends. That would have been cool. And I just, kind of wrote it off. And then I think it was like late March when I actually got the email from my agent. My agent always emails me. She never calls me. So I get this like big notification at the top of my screen. I was literally on my phone as it happened, like in the living room with my mom and my sister, I think. And it's like offer Ellie O'Brien, the Walter voice. And I was like, what? Who's made that mistake? I was like, that's not correct. What? Um, but then I opened it and it said for the role of Grace. And I was like, oh. How interesting, because I hadn't thought about Grace in so long, because after that first audition it had been like ages in my little brain. It'd been like a month, but when you're an actor that seems like a lifetime. um yeah, so I kind of like I still didn't really take it in. It was very fast. Like I had to leave for Calgary I think in like a couple weeks, and I was working at Starbucks at the time, so I was like, well, I gotta go quit Starbucks. Have fun making your frappuccinos all summer, guys. I'm going to Calgary, I guess. Yeah, and it just kind of like went like that, and I was Grace, and I just had a bunch of fun. It was always very I guess just going off of instincts and letting Grace, she's a very big character, and I just kind of let her do her thing, and that was about it. Yeah.
Wow, that story. It's funny how things work sometimes because like you mentioned, you didn't even really get a call back for Grace. So in the back of your mind, you were like, that's done with, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
get it. And so it's a nice surprise. And I guess you had your 2 weeks notice or whatever for Starbucks. So they gave you the right amount of time when you just all of a it's you probably got your schedule for like the next week and you're like, sorry, not gonna not gonna be there. I
I
have
know.
a show to shoot. You
Yeah.
kind of talked about going off instincts for your character, but like what really drew you towards her as you began to kind of read the scripts a bit more, maybe talk to Mel, as well as just the story and script for this show, The Walter Boys?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I value and like learned to value as I read more of the material was like this kind of what's the word? Like almost like whimsy of being a teenage girl, and this like that's something that's really inspiring to me. I made like a whole documentary last year that was just about like how it felt to be a teenage girl with me and my best friend at the time. And I'm just like so captivated by the kind of beautifully tragic way that teenage girls live life, and it's just like everything means 100% of like life's purpose all the time, and it's so visceral. So I think that was the big thing stylistically for the whole show that really stood out to me, was this kind of like appeal to girls of that age, and that kind of like really intense drama that I think is just so fun. And then I consider Grace a part of the audience almost a lot of the time. So I think I was just really excited to be almost like part of a mouthpiece maybe for an audience member who might be like, wait, but I want to know about this, and what about this, and that kind of like teenage girl energy that can kind of become all encompassing. So yeah, I was really excited to kind of go back to that part of my life. I think I had I was 19 when I got offered it, so I was kind of, I guess, like mourning a part of that like high school experience and everything. So it was good to go back there. And yeah, that was what really stood out to me as like a beautiful part of the story and of Grace, I think. Yeah.
What similarities and differences did you see between yourself and Grace in terms of like her personality, her values, interests? Like, did you go back to when you were in high school and take inspiration from past Ellie, or was it like kind of like completely different experience for you?
Yeah, I had always considered Grace and I very different people, but I remember like when the cast when we would all hang out together, like go places. One time we went like downhill go-karting, like it was almost like sledding. It's this like place in Calgary. I don't know. It's like it was really fun. And I found myself like very competitive and very up. I was like so high on energy all the time, like just like, and that was just in real life. And I think it was maybe Corey who plays Nathan who had said to me, like, you're so Grace. You really are like very similar to her. And I was like, what? I didn't really feel that way. But I think like when you're around people who are like very creative and invigorating in that way as well, it kind of brings something out of you. Um where I did just feel like I wanted to get to know everybody so much and I was so excited to be there. Yeah, so I guess I found myself more Grace, more amongst the Grace isms than I thought I would ever be. But I think generally speaking, she's very obviously energetic and she's got this like confidence about her that I do really associate with like younger Ellie, I guess. Like maybe even before high school, like when I was a kid, I was just like, and everybody listen to this thing I have to say because it's very important, okay? And I was like very, like I was saying, the eldest of five. Like I had crazy eldest daughter syndrome where everybody had to listen to me because I'm the boss. Okay, listen up now. And that was, I think there is a bit of that in Grace that comes out. And I try to give a little bit of myself to each character just because I think it's more fun that way. You maybe do less work that way. Um, so yeah, I think I don't know. I'm still playing with that. I don't know if we're not the same, but we are quite similar, more so than I thought, which has been an interesting thing to realize about myself, I think. Yeah.
And it's when people you know, people you love who kind of pick up on those things. Sometimes you kind of need to be told that, oh, like maybe I did show shades of this when I was younger. It's funny that that eldest sibling, eldest daughter syndrome you're
Yeah.
talking about, you're like definitely played into that. As we know, Grace loves the gossip and it can have negative consequences, especially at school. Why is she drawn towards rumors and participating in them?
Yeah, I think well, this is a big I actually I don't consider it a bad part of Grace. I think that it's just something very natural to a lot of people. And I think she's one of those people, you know. Excuse me, but I think that I think it's a part, like it's the small town effect, you know, when you're kind of, I think, especially somebody like Grace who is kind of sheltered in her familial life and isn't really allowed to maybe express herself in the fullest extent that, you know, might be good for a teenager. I don't know, but she is kind of left to her own devices a little bit. And I think that comes out in people watching and like psychoanalyzing the people around her. And I think that's just like a skill that she has and doesn't really know where to put it a little bit. Like I think one day, like maybe she'll make a great journalist. Maybe she'll make a great, I don't know. She could go on e-talk and like talk about celebrities all day if she wanted, and that would be great. But I think for right now, because of like her family life and maybe not being able to um like read about the Kardashians and stuff. Like I have this theory in my mind that her parents only let her have so much internet access, which is why she spends so much time being like, Skylar, I want to talk about this thing because like da, 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 da," you know, there's always something to talk about with her and she never seems to get bored of it. So I think it's a big part of her interests and maybe that's the only way she can express them right now. Um yeah. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think we get some acknowledgement of like, okay, maybe I should be sensitive about this closer to the end of the series, which was nice. And I hope that trajectory continues for Grace. I'm excited to see like how she takes that energy and puts it into something productive for herself and the people around her, you know. I think that's an important part of growing up.
I will note a disclaimer that like this is irrespective of what could be like defined and explored in future seasons in season two. But do you have any more notes that you kind of thought about in terms of Grace's childhood, what that was like and what her upbringing was like and how that shaped who she is? Because you mentioned the theory about maybe limiting like screen time and time on her phone. I know she references going to help out with a church barbecue. Her parents don't let her date. So how did that all kind of culminate into the Grace that we know in season one?
Yeah, I think for the most part, and I talked to Mel, our showrunner, about this actually, because I spent a lot of time trying to kind of unravel this in my mind, but I think for the most part, her upbringing, like her strict upbringing and like very traditionally religious upbringing, hasn't had too much of a negative effect on her. I think it's probably actually, for the most part, made her a better person who's, you know, community oriented and able to, you know, relate to people in like a, or at least I think we'll touch on this more, but in a sensitive way. I think she's quite sensitive to the way other people are feeling, and that comes through in some of the advice that she gives other characters. Um, but I will say that I think her being an only child and well, at least in the first season, she was canonically an only child. There was like a scene that got cut, so she might not be in later dates, but from the work I did in season one, I think not having siblings to tell her to like shut up is a big part of why Grace is the way that she is. Um, so yeah, I think that definitely plays in probably more than the strict background thing. But yeah, I mean, it could go any which way in the second season. I'm excited to see what kind of shenanigans she finds herself in. I'm sure there'll be some. So yeah.
I'm sure there will be many. Like we do know on the show that she does like to dream and fantasize. She does play Kiss, Mary, Kill. I'm sure her parents wouldn't love that, but just like kind of a fact of, you know, what she's kind of been bottling up. She is close friends with Skylar and Kiley. What can you say about their friendship dynamics and the support that they give each other?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, her friendship with Skylar is one of the best parts about playing Grace. I mean, I love working with Jalen, and I think that we get to play off each other really well, and we get a lot of freedom when we do scenes together, and I think that that plays into how Skylar and Grace interact with this kind of like, and then we're always like building on each other, which is really fun as an actor. And then also I think it's a really cool storytelling device, because it kind of gives this structure or gives this foundation to a relationship that you might not have had to have seen for the past 10 years, but you see it on screen and you go, oh, those are best friends. um yeah, I think like in terms of support, I think there's a scene in scene 7 that's really um that really it just demonstrates this well, where you know, Skylar's kind of asking about what people are saying about him and Nathan, and Grace is like, you're not gonna like it, but I'll tell you. And you know, I think that they always stand up for each other, and she's happy to share what she knows, obviously, with him all the time. Um, yeah, I think they just have fun together. I think that's important when you're a teenager, is like the friends that you have around you should be people that you feel like you can just entirely let loose with. And I think they definitely have that dynamic. And then I think with Kylie's such a rational person, and really she's very grounded, and Grace is obviously like really up in the clouds. So I think they make for a fun duo as well. And they just like bring out different sides to each other. Um, yeah, I hope there's more of that in season 2 for sure, because I love working with Maya as well. Yeah.
I love getting to see those dynamics. And I spoke with Maya and we were talking about, she's not as gossip oriented outwardly, but there's always that friend who's like curious about what's going on. So I'm sure that Skylar and Grace feed her with all the information she needs. But Grace is the first in the show to use the term the Cole effect. How would you describe the Cole effect to a regular person? And does Noah exude that same energy?
I mean, well, the Cole effect, I'll start there. I think the Cole effect, there's a line, I think I say, or Grace says, it's just the Cole effect. Like you can't explain it and you can't describe it. It's just the Cole effect, which I think is a funny way to put it. I think it is this kind of like almost esoteric, like something that it almost seems like godlike in the way that they describe it is very like untouchable. It's just something that you don't mess with. Um yeah, but I think Noah in real life, he doesn't have obviously the same like kind of mystery about him. Like he's very approachable and just like generally lovely to talk to. So I think that's a big difference. Obviously, he's extremely charming, and that's why he is Cole Walter. But yeah, I think it's nice that those things go hand in hand. I'm sure that um well, I mean, I get a lot of messages asking me like, "What's Noah like?" And I'm like, "Girl, I don't know. Get in his DMs. Like, what? What are you asking me for?" But he is genuinely very lovely and easy to talk to, which I think is a big difference between him and Cole. So there is a Noah effect, I'm sure, but it's just much more um nice and normal than Cole.
Not like in the show when, yeah, it's almost like the whole pedestal thing, right? That's kind of the thing that's been touched upon. What was your favorite scene to film, be a part of, and why?
Um, I didn't think this at the time, but looking back and also watching the show, I think there's a scene in episode 6 where Jackie and Skylar and Grace are all in the library and they're talking about some history with Alex and Cole and Paige. And that was actually the first scene I ever filmed for Walter Boys. And it was like I was saying, it was a very fast process. Like I feel like I just like landed in Calgary, went for a wardrobe fitting, and the next day I was like on set and I didn't really have time to process anything or talk to anybody beforehand. So I literally met Jalen, who plays Skylar, and Nikki, who plays Jackie, like on the day when we got there to film that scene. And I was really, really, really nervous because it was one of those scenes where Skylar and Grace are kind of like talking almost like as a unit and like really playing off each other. So I was like, this is going to be difficult to do without even having met Jalen. I didn't know anything about anybody. So, but then I got to set and it was like, poof. Okay, so now Jalen and I are best friends, so you can hit roll and this will be great. It was ridiculous, just how easy both Jalen and Nikki were to get along with. And Jerry, who is our director for that episode, he directed episode 1 and 2 and then 5 and 6, I think. He was very, very, very tolerant of us just being able to like do our thing. And he was like, go nuts, say whatever you want, like do a little improv. I don't care. Like this is high school. This is gossip. Go ahead, do it. So Jalen and I just had a great time making up some baloney like for like 2 hours. And it was a wonderful time. And I felt so accepted by both of them in that moment. And they had already been in Calgary for a while. So I was just, I just felt really grateful that I kind of felt like, okay, I'm in good hands and this will be fun. This won't be terrifying. Um, and it was a great way to get over your first day jitters because you're kind of thrown into this massive scene of like, yeah. And now I watch it and it's one of my favorite scenes. So it was great.
And speaking about Grace and Jackie, she is really quick to befriend Jackie after she sees her getting lunch with Cole. They have that awkward first meet in class. Were Grace's motives genuine from the start?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Like I always played Grace as if she just genuinely wanted to understand this whole new dynamic. So I think she went in more with like a curiosity than anything. But I think the turning point is after that scene with Aaron, when Aaron is like, "Get away, Miss J. Crew over here," and Jackie does not stand for that. I think at that moment, there's like, "Oh, this chick is cool," and like I want to be her little bestie. And I think I'm sure a lot of audience members felt that way too. So I think maybe there's a switch there, and that's when it starts being about Jackie more than anything for Grace and probably for Skylar as well. But I think, yeah, she definitely just went in like curious and wanting to understand and obviously very clumsy. There's this like clumsiness to Grace that I think I didn't realize until I started just like playing with things on the day. Um yeah. So she doesn't always say the right thing at the right time, but I think Jackie's such a good character that she's willing to overlook that kind of thing just because she's a saint. I don't know. She's perfect. So
I'd
yeah.
be
And
like, if I was Jackie, I'd be like, some of the things that, especially Grace initially, she's like, oh boy, heaven, blah, blah, blah. Like, knowing that she has like this terrible situation. If Jackie was like rude, she'd say, get away from me. Like, I can't deal with this right
yeah.
now.
Yeah. I think Jackie's definitely a saint for sure. She puts up with a lot of missteps from Grace for sure. But I think Grace does eventually redeem herself in her own clumsy way. Um, and I hope that comes across. God bless her. So yeah.
It was really nice to kind of see their friendship grow throughout the season. Like you mentioned, hopefully more girl moments between the two of them. But the scene in episode 9 between them was such a special moment when Jackie lends Grace Lucy's dress for the county fair. What do you think that moment meant to Grace?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really, really love that scene. We got those scripts way later on. Like that wasn't something that we had kind of known that would happen from the start. So when I read it, I was like, how sweet is that? It's nice to see them be genuine friends in that moment. And I think, we don't see a lot of this, but I imagine that Grace and Jackie and Skylar probably as well have a lot of conversations about like Jackie's life beforehand. And I think that moment was probably very full circle and like healing for them and for a lot of the memories that they might have touched on before. So and I think clothes, like doing that through clothes is such a great way to do it. Well, obviously because it's important to Jackie, whose mom was a fashion designer, and she always talks about how fashionable and the cool her older sister was. So and I think Grace also has that appreciation for fashion just because it's kind of something that is off limits for her and she can't always dress the way she wants to. So it's this kind of like, it's this other world to her that I think is just something she really admires probably about Jackie and her life before. So I thought it was a very, very sweet way for them to connect. Um and again, it just goes to show you like she's a saint. I'll say it again. Like she's wonderful. She's so nice. She's so nice to Grace. And I think a lot of the time she doesn't really I mean at least on screen from what we see, it's like Jackie doesn't have to do that. And I think that's what makes her such a good protagonist is that um she chooses love a lot of the time and she chooses like the people around her. Um yeah. So I think that was a great moment and one that I wasn't expecting. So it was great to see.
And that's probably something that Grace also really sees in Jackie as she spends more time with her as well, that kind of caring nature.
Yeah. I think Jackie, um, in many ways, like she's kind of thrown into this, obviously. So trying to kind of get her own personality and values back in line has probably been a very long process. And to just be able to do something like that, probably means a lot to both of them.
So you did share most of your scenes opposite Nikki Rodriguez as Jackie. What can you say about Nikki as a scene partner and person, but also how she's carried herself as the lead now that the show has been released?
Yeah, I think Nikki's a great lead. I think Nikki is very much a leader. And I think especially for those of us who weren't in the Walter Boy kind of unit or like family dynamic, like maybe like between Grace and Skylar and Kylie and all the more like school kids. Nikki was just a fantastic, because we didn't really work with Sarah and Mark, who played the parents, as much. So she was our leader. Like she's our fearless leader for sure. Um and I think it was interesting getting to know her throughout the whole time together that we spent in Calgary, because I mean, she is very driven like Jackie, and she's very goal oriented, but she's also very different from her in a lot of ways. Um yeah, and I admire Nikki a lot. I think she's really handled this kind of like boom into visibility really well. And I think that's because she's very sure of herself and sure of her ability to, I almost want to say, like, protect the people around her. I have this memory of, we were all at the pool one time and there was this security guard who was just being like really mean to us, like really rude. And Nikki, in that moment, she was like, no, like this is not happening. And she just like, she stood up for us and with such poise and like, just, I guess grace is the word, like not grace, but grace. Um, that was really, really, I really admire that. I think about it all the time. Like she could have been rude. She could have been disrespectful. This guy deserved it. But she was like, no, 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 you don't speak to me or my friends that way. And it was very like, she just put him in his place. And I think that shines, like, I think that self-assuredness is so important in, a lead and something that has kind of turned out to be massive beyond anybody's prediction. So, um, yeah. Yeah, and she's lovely. She like messaged everybody and was like, guys, I'm really proud of all of us. I'm like, girl, I'm really proud of you. Why do you think we got this season 2 and now we're all getting this check for season 2? Like, thank you, girl. Love you. So she's carried us and she's wonderful. Yeah.
I love that. And what a team mentality it seems
Yeah.
like she has. I'm sure you can't wait to see everyone again. What was your favorite set to film at? Because you got to go to a number of them. I know most of them were at school, but there was the Lark Cafe you also spent significant time at.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I think my favorite one was probably the county fair. That was a cool one because we filmed it at the Calgary like Country Heritage Park, and that place is allegedly very haunted. So like Jalen and Maya and I would, and I think Madison Bridges was there too, who plays Paige. We would all go over to this like haunted house, and there was a guy there who, I think he worked the grounds, and he was like showing us around, and he was like, this is where the woman wails through the window, and we were like, oh my, we were all just like being ridiculous. And there was a lot of extras that day too, so there was a lot of interesting people to talk to. I think we spent actually a couple days there. Um, and it actually ended up being, that was towards the end of our shoot. So Maya and I decided one night that we had scenes like earlier in the day, but we were gonna stay and hang out and not go home yet. Like it was a night shoot, and we were like, why don't we just stay? We were like totally sleep deprived by the end of it, but it was fine because it was fun. And we what was the scene we watched? It was Aaron and Olivia up on the carousel thing. And that's a really sweet scene between the two of them, and it's just like great acting. So it was a really, really fun night. We got to just hang out, and it literally felt like we were just running around the park for like hours in the middle of the night, because that's what it was. It was great.
So you were there behind the monitors watching them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's pictures of us, like I think Kayla Heller was there too, who plays Ruby. And the sound guys had given us like context so that we could hear the monitor feed. Um so that was fun. I think that was because Deb, one of our producers, who is absolutely lovely. Like Deb is like our mother on set. Like I just would die for her. She's wonderful. Um she's a really good mentor, because I told her a lot about my studies and stuff behind the scenes, and she was like, let me get you a comtech, like I want you to watch the feed and just be a little behind the scenes girly for a sec. So we all got our little comtechs and sat and watched our peers, Alicia and Abby, just like blow us all away with their great acting, and it was insane. So yeah.
That's great. And I mean, you don't even have to ask. It seems like they're voluntarily like trying to get you this more behind the scenes perspective, which is so nice. Is there anything specific you remember from the bonfire scenes in
Oh,
episode 6?
The bonfire was a funny one because that was right at the start of filming. And it was honestly quite a blur. That was also a night shoot. And a lot of us had stayed up really late the night before to try and like just sleep through the day and then film at night. But I could not do that for some reason. Like I couldn't sleep through the day. So I had already been up for like 14 hours and I just had to like keep trying to push through this night shoot. And so all just became a blur. I was looking through my camera roll the other day to try and get like, cute little behind the scenes things from the bonfire. And I had like two pictures. One of them was just me looking miserable in my little jacket, just like wanting to die because it was so freezing. And then the other one was like a blurry picture of the bonfire because I guess like it was a huge bonfire. So I guess I thought like, oh, that's cool. It's huge. Like that's a cool set piece. You can't see anything. Like my fingers must have been like this, like shaking. Um, but I do remember that we went out for lunch or no, for breakfast afterwards when we wrapped, and that was really fun. There's a picture, like a Polaroid picture of us all sitting around the table. I think it's on my Instagram, and we just look like a shell of human beings. It's because we were. Yeah.
I love that your two photos are just like not shareable at this point. You were like, okay, I guess I took nothing from the bonfire.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great.
Let's talk about something at the bonfire, Grace and Isaac. What do
Yeah.
you think Grace's read on Isaac is, aside from considering him to be the cool dude, as she tells Jackie when she's introducing who the Walter boys are?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an interesting one because I think Grace spends a lot of time, like I was saying, psychoanalyzing the people of Silver Falls and trying to like figure them all out. But I think she's kind of still in the process of that with both Lee and Isaac because they're kind of new as well around here, at least from the way that I'm reading it, because we haven't really looked into that too much so far. Um, but they've moved in with Catherine, Walt, like and Catherine and George. They're kind of new to Silver Falls. So I think she's still trying to get a read on them both a little bit. And Isaac is one of those people where you're like, literally, what is going on behind your mind? Like, I think he has this extreme wall up. I think Grace can definitely sense that. Yeah. And when I watched that scene, when he's like, I'm planting the seed, bro, and he like comes up to Grace, and I didn't realize how much I sounded, but like I was totally confused. Like the way I say hi is like, hi, like what? Like what is happening? Um, so I was surprised how much of that came through on camera. Yeah, I think it's just a guessing game still between like from Grace's perspective, looking at these two boys. I think she's like, girl, I haven't the faintest, and I'm gonna find their mom's Facebook or their dad's Facebook or something. Some research has got to get done. Yeah, so I'm excited. I hope that's something that kind of gets talked about in season two, is their background. Because yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for sure.
I know I've talked to both Miles and Isaac, and there's so much to explore with the Garcias, their past, their mom, their dad, and his deployment. Before we talk a bit more about Isaac, I have to say that whole monologue you gave, like in episode one, is so good. Like the delivery was so good. I don't think he took a breath talking about the Walter boys. You had the "What's up, bro?" and the stereotypical
Yeah.
jock of voice. How was that for you to kind of prepare for and just get out there and perform for the cameras?
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that one up because I watched that one and it really like I just wish that I had an extra week to like say those words in my mouth and like get used to saying them and like the Grace way of just everything has to get said all the time, like really fast before everybody stops listening to me because I talk so much all the time. Like that kind of performance, I think it's really fun when you get it right, but I was really nervous on the day about getting it wrong. So I watch it and I just see Ellie like being like, okay, what's the next one? Like help, help, help. So um but I think Grace does, because she's such a big character, she always comes through and she kind of saves me a little bit in that scene because I was really nervous and Grace was really not. And there's another thing, people don't know this, but the the "what's up, bro" line, like that kind of thing, that was actually all ADR, which is like syncing. Like I had to go into the sound studio and sync myself saying that line again, like a year later, I think. Just an exact same intonation. I think there was like just a technical issue or something. Um, but it was so specific at that point in my mind that it was actually very easy to just say it the exact same way again because I think like the specificness of the way that Grace talks is so unique and is such a little compartmentalized part of my brain that I just have to like tap it and it just comes out that same way. So um yeah, so that part is interesting. And I was really nervous, but I think we got what we needed to get on that day. So I'm glad that people like that scene because I don't.
I don't think people could tell. So I think kudos to you if that's you at like 50% or something. But it's
Absolutely.
good that the muscle memory saved you for ADR. After the bonfire, do you think in Grace's mind that there is something more between her and Isaac?
I don't know. I'm gonna say that I don't think so because I think Isaac, and maybe this is just because I also know Isaac, like the actor, is so similar to his character. He like the way he was playing it on the day was very like very suave. Like he's always putting on a show. This character, Isaac, of course. Um, so I think from Grace's perspective, when we were doing that scene, I was like, okay, who is this for? Because it's not me. Like, there's something being proven to somebody in this party that I don't know. And so I think she's very suspicious of Isaac. But then later on in episode 7, when she's like asking him, like, we're beer pong buddies, right? I think like she's happy to play into that to get her own information that she needs. And I think it's the same in the bonfire when they play together because she's like, hey, if it means I'm gonna win, I don't know what his deal is, but I know what mine is, and that's that I want to win beer pong. So like, let's go, you know. But I think she does have a huge suspicion about him. I think that's the way that felt most natural on the day was like, there's a game being played here. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm going to figure it out. So yeah, I think that's how I would describe that relationship. Yeah.
She did get Isaac to cave really easily in episode
Mhm.
7 to give up the info. So I don't know. There could be something there. It's funny because in episode 3, when she's playing Kiss Mary Kill, she does throw Cole, Alex, and Isaac's name in there. So a little bit of an Easter egg that it's not someone like she just kind of ignores or discards. She does call out Jackie and Cole's attraction to each other early
Yeah.
on. Do you think that Grace had an opinion on if Alex or Cole would be a better fit for Jackie and why? And did she see any red flags from them throughout the season?
That's a good question. Well, I think that Alex and Grace being the same age have grown up together and I think Alex is he's a very sweet and genuinely nice person and I think that she would love to see that dynamic work out between Alex and Jackie. And then I think like perhaps maybe like most audience members, I think Grace is very much an audience member in this whole thing. Like I think she just watches with a almost like objective mind and she sees that, well, they would be nice in theory, but there's Cole. And like I see the way that Cole looks at you and I see the way you look at Cole. That's a huge thing in like the art room scene that happens with I think Kylie's there as well. Yeah, Kylie's there. And she's like, "Oh my God, he's flirting with you." And he's just like looked at her wrong and she's like, "Oh my God, he's in love with you." You know, that kind of thing. I think it's very, very palpable. And I don't think Grace is going to write that off at all. I think she would probably think that they should be together, but she wants Alex to be happy too, so it sucks. Yeah.
I did find it interesting at Mountain View how, um, like you mentioned, she knows Alex is a nice guy, but he really wanted to go bowling at a specific time, and he was starting to get a little agitated. So I don't know if either of
Yeah.
them picked up on that being like a little bit weird or a red flag.
Yeah, I think about that scene a lot actually. Like I think Alex, I think he likes being in control. Obviously, I think he's a very intentional person. I always hear Ashby say that about him, which I think is very true. Um, and I think Grace just being a kind of like go with the flow type person. Jackie's kind of in the middle and has to decide which way she wants to go in that moment. Is it like, well, do I do what Alex wants, which is like A, B, C, D, very neat in line, this is the way it's going to be, or do I like just have a little fun with Grace? So I think that was a good, I look at that scene as a way for Jackie to kind of um be her own person a little bit. And she's kind of given an excuse to like make her own decision and be spend her time however she wants in that moment. Um, and I think it does say a lot about Alex as well. But I think Grace probably has spent a lot of time psychoanalyzing him as well and like knows he's a little bit like that. So I don't think she blames him, or I don't think it's like a weird red flag to her in that moment. I think she's just more like, well, Alex is doing an Alex thing again, and Jackie and I are just gonna play some Mario Kart or whatever we're doing. So, it's a weird one. It's a fun scene. Um, I think there's a lot to be said about Alex's character and Jackie's in that moment. Yeah.
I like that. And for Jackie, like you mentioned, kind of assessing those priorities for herself. Which was your favorite scene as a viewer and why? So a scene that Grace was not in.
I think I really like watching Corey and Jalen on screen together, who plays Skylar and Nathan. So I really liked the scene where they're like Nathan kind of walks by Skylar in the bathroom, like taking his shirt off and stuff. Like I was like, ah, yeah, what's happening? Like I was very like drawn into the Walter Boys fandom mind in that moment. Um, and I think they're just so cute. They're like little cutie patooties on screen. I love them. I love to watch them. Um, and it's the same with the parents, with Catherine and George. I really love watching them on screen as well. There's like a scene where he has like framed her newspaper article, and I think that's so sweet. And he's like so proud of her. And that was something that I don't think, like, reading it is one thing, but then seeing it on screen, you're like, oh, they're so good together. I love that. So I want to see more of that, just like as a viewer for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes is like not forgotten, but a bit forgotten with all these teenagers around is that like you have these adults, even with Will and Haley, and you kind of see them go through like these troubles with finances and like relationships maybe not working out in terms of life goals, which is like where these teenagers are not at yet. So it's nice to kind of display both of those in the show.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that it also speaks to, I think Walter Boys has like a pretty grand appeal. And I think that's why probably that it's done better than we could have imagined, really, like over the past couple of weeks. Um, there's kind of something for everybody in the script and in the scenes that play out. So yeah, I think Will and Haley are a big part of that. The guidance counselor as well, Tara and like Nikhil and Uncle Richard. Like it's such a web. I was saying this the other day. There's just so much Silver Falls lore to get into. I think it's a big part of audience appeal. So I love watching it. It makes me go, oh yeah, I forgot about that part. Cool. Yeah.
In season two, now that it has been officially announced, what do you hope to see or explore with Grace? And then are there any other storylines for other characters you feel like really attached to and have to know more about? I know we kind of touched on it, but you can kind of summarize again.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, I think for Grace, I'm excited to I think Grace has led a very um she's almost like she's in a different world than everybody else in this first season. I think she's almost like if this was the Truman Show, she's like been plucked out of the audience and popped into Silver Falls and just like has to watch all the drama unfold. So I'd like to see her, I guess, like become a bit more, I guess, like sensitive to these characters as like real people. I think that could be really fun for her to grow in that way. Um, and I think there is maybe some potential for her to grow also in terms of like her strict background and her to think about like what are my beliefs and what's important to me, what are my values, and what have I grown up with, what's woven into me, and where do I want to go with this, you know? So I'm excited to see if any of that comes to the surface. Um, yeah, and then I think for other characters, I'm very excited for Lee and Isaac. I hope that they get their moment to kind of I think like Lee, the way he reacts to Jackie right now is very like, you know, somebody who's been through some trauma for sure. So I'd like to see him unpack that with Jackie. I think like they probably have very not similar, but like I think they have similar lessons to learn, and I think they could do a lot of growth together. So I'm excited to see that happen. And I also want more of Parker because I love her. I love that she's just like, um, you know, I guess like being the only girl must be such an experience in that house. So well, until Jackie gets there, of course. So she's going through a big dynamic shift. I think Alex also is such a great actor who plays Parker. I never really get to have any scenes with her, of course, but she's like, I think her ability on screen is very clear. So I'd love to see more of her and Benny. He's such a cutie, of course.
The kids are so cute, and it's funny because you can kind of see them grow up the most. Like I know when you're already kind of a young adult, you don't see that growth as much, but by the time you see like Alex and Lennox again, they would have almost like grown a couple of years.
I know. I wonder what's gonna happen. I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, Lennox, your real teeth came in. Like, what's happened? You know, like it'll be so fun. Yeah. And they're already so cool and like well adjusted. So I think it'll be yeah, I hope we get to see them all again. And I'd love for Grace to get to know them. I think they could be really good friends, okay? I think
She
they
would teach them all the gossip, or she would get
exactly.
all the information from them too. I think it would work both ways.
That's a good idea. Let's email Mel. Let's let her know.
Grace might bribe them with like candy and
Yeah.
whatnot. What can you say about the friendships that you formed with this cast and what they mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying the other day that I grew up kind of on set. I was a child actor. I started when I was pretty young, but everything I did was with older people. I was always kind of the only kid on set or the only teenager on set. So to spend so much time with people who, you know, are your real friends and like your own age, and you're kind of going through the same things a lot of the time was really new and special for me. So I just feel really lucky that everybody that I met was kind and normal because actors are not always normal people. So yeah, I feel really lucky, and to have kind of I have honestly come out of this with a lot of lifelong friends. Like I talk to Maya and Jalen all the time. I just stayed at Maya's, like she is so generous all the time. Um with you know me and also my partner as well. We both went to stay in Vancouver with her, and it was just so lovely to see everybody again and also feel like no time has passed. Um, so yeah, I'm literally gonna cry, but I feel very excited to go back for season two and you know get to see all my little besties again because I think it's we have honestly built something really special. And I know people always say that and you're like, okay, sure, whatever, but I genuinely like I hope that comes across to people that it's like people who are invested in the show and the behind the scenes stuff. It's like there's kind of love bursting at the seams here amongst one another. And I feel very lucky that season two is a reality now because I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I would have done without getting to see my little besties again.
You all would have just shown up to Calgary and been like, okay, we're here, we're ready. Can Netflix please give us that second
Yeah.
season?
Somebody write something. I don't know. Get a play off the internet. We'll figure it out. Yeah, for sure.
And I know Maya mentioned you guys like you basically talk at least once every week and kind of catch up. So
Yeah.
there's something about the lifelong friendships. What messages have you received or seen since the show's release, and like what has that fan support meant to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get a lot of messages of people just saying that they really relate to Grace, and I get like a lot of, oh my God, Grace is literally my twin. Like I'm literally Grace. I love Grace. A lot of that. So a lot of love for Grace, which I wasn't expecting, honestly. I think like I was overthinking a lot of the kind of clumsy things that she says. And I was like, oh my God, people are gonna hate her. Like, why did she say that? That kind of thing. But I think at least I would like to think that the sincerity and um just kind of like honest clumsiness um comes across. So I'm glad that people enjoy Grace and can relate to her and the kind of imperfections, and her energy is something that people seem to be liking. So I'm thankful for that. And I got a really sweet message that was um a girl talking about how she'd kind of grown up in that kind of strict background as well. And she had always wanted to wear the cute clothes and her parents say no, and she's was kind of had to find different ways to express herself in that way. And she was saying that Grace was a good representation of that on screen. And that really touched me, because I think that Grace is a character. I think she's very optimistic and wants the best for herself and other people around her. I think she'll grow up to have a nice little life, and I think she's got a lot to figure out, but she's overall a positive influence and a positive person. So I'm happy that that can do some good for people, I guess.
So nice that you got that message, and it says a lot, especially if you didn't grow up like with the same background, but you get to kind of play this character that had that shelter growing up, and to learn that it resonates with people is always so special for you as an actor, and says a lot about your performance. We
Oh.
will go through some tweets now, so if you have your phone ready.
Yeah. I'm so nervous for this. I've been like looking at the links for
You're like studying them, but
I'm
it's
like,
just numbers, so what do they say? You will find out soon.
okay, all right, I've got them up. Melissa Blackwood says, quote unquote, "You're so lucky you live in Walter Boy heaven." Does Grace actually want to move in and see if she's not disillusioned after a few hours? Hashtag my life with the Walter Boys. I have seen this one because this was an early one that got tweeted on like the hashtag when I was like, it just came out. I was looking through it. And I thought this one was so funny because it's like, I'm sure she would like to move in for a few hours. Like, duh, I'm sure Grace would love that. Like, I don't think anything could make Grace disillusioned at this point. I think she's, like I'm saying, just such a positive person. But yeah, I don't think what Jackie's been going through is any type of dream by any means. But
Was gonna say, I don't think Grace would find bleached hair very attractive.
yeah, I think she would hate that. That's for sure. But I mean, it might be like she might have turned it into like an excuse to go blonde or something. I don't know. Like I'm sure
She
there's
would have
always
put a positive spin on anything that the Walter boys
like,
would do
it's
to her.
fine. Yeah. Yeah. But it's a good question. I think Grace is kind of I get the like Grace, what the hell? Especially in the first few episodes, because Grace is a very tactless until a bit later on. So I get it, girl. I get it. I would be disillusioned as Ellie O'Brien. I can tell you that. Okay. Why is Grace low-key the villain? Like in brackets, what's her deal? Hashtag my life with the Walter boys. Am I the villain? I don't think I'm
Did
the
you ever see her as a villain in any circumstance? Like, I do have to say, her rumor, whatnot with the Walters definitely fueled the auditorium fight, because what she basically learned got out there really quickly.
Yeah, I think Grace probably has a bit more power than she should have in that realm of like spreading rumors. Like there's a lot of there we played with one thing in that scene with Jalen or Skylar and Grace where he's asking like, how do we have a ship name? Like what is Skythin? We were barely even together, and we played with it like in a couple takes where I was like, I don't know, like people have ears. I don't know. I definitely didn't make up that rumor, but so we played it a couple times like Grace did that. So yeah, I think Grace is maybe a little bit low key the villain in some respects, but you know what? I'll go to bat for her every time. I think, you know what? She's just a little teenage girl. She's just a girl. She can't help it. Okay? That's what I'll say about that. But that's funny. I'm gonna consider that. Why is Grace Loki the villain in season 2? Oh, this one's funny. Ooh. Okay, this one I should preface this by saying like I keep forgetting that when I type things on the internet, like people can see them nowadays and like it's important. So I don't know. But anyways, the tweet is Kylie and Grace, girlfriends, next season, I will be there no matter what. And it's a screenshot of, I think this was Maya's comment section where Maya's friend Ryan goes, Case Endgame, like Case is in Kylie and Grace. And then Maya responds and she asks me and she goes, Ellie, are you seeing this? And I go, yes, Ryan, exactly. Which was crazy of me. But you know what? I think that Kylie and Grace are very fun together. I think they have this great dynamic that I think is honestly, I feel very comfortable with Maya. Like we just have fun all the time whenever we're around each other. So I think acting together is just like a blast. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what they'll do with that. Will they be girlfriends? I don't know. You'll have to write emails to Mel, our showrunner, because I can't tell you.
But there
But
is
I'm not gonna be
something
the one to say now.
to say about strong female friendships, so important to the show. So I'm glad we got to see that. And one of her favorite scenes, I think, was with the one where she has that Grace has a dress reveal to
Yeah.
Kylie, and there's something like the feminine energy there.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fun. I think, and I Maya was also saying that that was a fun one for Kylie as a character as well because I think she's always kind of like playing video games with like, Alex who's such a dude and so that was a fun scene because we got to be very fun and girly together. Yeah, and I think a very like core part of the story is the female friendships. And I think I mean, I'm at this point I'm most interested in that kind of thing like excuse me, I think especially with like Aaron and Jackie, I'm excited to see what their friendship turns into. I think Kylie and Grace is probably another good example of that. So, yeah, I don't know. I hope there's more of it. In what kind of format? I don't know. But there you go. I guess I'll do the last one. This one has been terrifying me because I can see from the link that it's something I tweeted. So I'm like, oh, what did I say? What did I say? But let's see. Oh my God. This is from like 2020. So they have some Scooby-Doo merch at work. If I don't get some, I'll combust. Big fact about me is that I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan. This is true. Like since I like could talk, I've been like a Scooby-Doo stan. I don't know. But I used to work at Cineplex back in like high school, I guess like right up until the pandemic, which is a movie theater in Canada for people who don't know that. But um yeah, we had the Scooby-Doo movie was coming out. There was like an animated version that was coming out I think quite literally in like the end of March 2020. And I was so excited for this goddamn movie to come out so that there could be merch of like little Scooby-Doos and I could take it from work, get my little discount and stuff. And then there was a pandemic, so I never got to get any. Actually, I think that's a lie. I think I did snag one like mystery machine. It's around here somewhere. That's really
They
good.
also have like Cineplex had like exclusive
Yeah,
cups and stuff like popcorn bags. So do you have any collection of
I don't know.
those?
I honestly, because I worked at Starbucks after that, and I probably have more of like the Starbucks merch than anything. Because that was ridiculous. That was a ridiculous time in my life.
Ellie in the food service
Yeah.
industry.
Hey, you want a little frappuccino? I got you. You want some popcorn? I got you. Yeah, that was my thing all throughout high school and I guess like my first couple years of college before Walter Boys. Um, yeah, that's funny. Ah,
Would you go back, or is the dream to not not have to make another frappuccino
I
or
don't know. I
mocha?
think about this all the time because I actually did like my time at Starbucks. And when there was the strike this past summer, I was like, hmm, maybe we gotta pick up the blender again, honey. Like, I don't know. But then I think about some of the other customer interactions that I had where people were just like insane, especially through the pandemic. And I was like, hmm, I feel like I would rather be a little bit broke and just like keep trying. Like we're good. So I hope I never have to go back, but like, would it be the worst thing in the world? No. We'll see. If you catch me making some mochas, don't ask me about it. I don't know. Oh, I think this is like a ranking. Okay, so Grace, what's my ranking? 11 out of 10. That's a good one. If Inez was a person, she's such a, oh, that I think that's a Taylor Swift reference. Like, you heard the rumors from Inez. Yeah, yeah, that's a Taylor Swift reference. I see you, Swifty. Okay, so if Inez was a person, she's such a drama queen. I love her. She's so amazing. Her looks eat, her lines eat. She is that girl. They all want to be her so bad. Get her and Isaac together immediately. That's funny. Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying. I'm glad Grace is resonating with people. That's funny. I did a lot of listening to Taylor Swift like to get in the Grace mood, but it was actually a lot of the earlier stuff, like her first album and like Speak Now and that kind of thing. So it's interesting, but I think Grace probably I should probably listen to the later albums like Folklore and all that again. And yeah, it's fun.
You in the mood for season two, Grace, but that's a lot of high praise. I love the fashion choices as well. Was it always fun to go to wardrobe and see what they picked out for
Yeah, yeah.
you?
I think Grace has a very different style than me. Grace is very colorful. I don't know if you can see, but I'm like I always wear black and like sweatpants. I've got sweats on right now. Um, but Grace is very colorful, very pink. She has these like they're like patent pink Doc Martens that she wears all the time, and they're really cute. They were kind of iconic to me by the end of it, as like a Grace staple. And a lot of jumpsuits, funnily enough. I didn't know jumpsuits were really comfy. But they are, and they're also great for mics because I could just put my little mic in my pocket and be like, that's that. Nobody has to worry about it. So yeah, it was always a fun time. I hope she has like some kind of like I'm really interested to see if some of her evolution is kind of shown through the clothes because I think that was a big part of high school for me, like finding my own style and stuff. So I hope Grace gets that same experience. Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, someone wants her and Isaac together, so I don't
Yeah, I
know.
don't know. Like I'm
I
saying, gotta send emails to Mel. I don't know. I can
I'm
tell
sure
you
it would
what.
be fun to play off of Isaac though, because him like pushing into like that playing into the whole flirty, cool attitude is really fun to see on screen.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm interested to see. I think like the suspicion is a fun thing to play. Like I'm trying to figure you out and you're like I don't know what this is. I think it's fun to discover things in the scene as they happen. So I mean from an acting perspective it would be a lot of fun. And Isaac's great. I love Isaac. We hang out a lot, so he's a fun one. Um yeah, I don't know. I won't say anything else because I literally don't know.
Season two is probably writer's room right now, so really excited for you all to get back to Alberta. We'll talk about another upcoming project you have. You are making a return to the horror genre in It Feeds as Jordan. What can you share about this project and what you like about this horror genre?
Yeah, I don't know. I've always kind of found myself like as a viewer, I've recently actually this semester I took a class called Cinema of Horror because I really liked the professor, but then I like found that it was really hard for me to watch horror movies. Like I'm not a horror movie audience member, but being in them, there's always just been something about that since I was a kid. Like my first film was a horror. I did like a sci-fi thing where I got to be a series regular when I was pretty young, and that was kind of sci-fi, maybe horror adjacent. And I've always just been like the creepy kid all the time, like since I was this big. So to go back to the horror genre as an adult now and get to play a different character was really interesting. And I had never really gotten to be the lead in a film before, like one of the lead characters. So that was a really humbling experience for me, like as an actor to just I guess like have more material to work with and arcs and so many things to think about and consider in building this character. So yeah, the character is really fun. Her name is Jordan, and she is a firecracker and very determined, and she's very different from Grace. So I'm excited for people to see a different side of me and you know the kind of characters I can play. So um, yeah, I think it'll be fun. It's I don't know when, I don't know any details yet. I've been talking to the director Chad, and I you know I think they wanted it to be a surprise, a good surprise. So. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to
Hopefully,
see.
hopefully this year. But
Yeah, hopefully.
Chad, like you mentioned, Chad Archibald is well experienced in horror. So what was it like working with him and the atmosphere on set? And you also had some pretty talented cast members as well
Yeah.
in Ashley Green and Sean Ashmore.
Yeah, yeah. No, they were really fun. I think it was because I mean, I have done a lot of work in horror, generally speaking, but Chad was a really good leader in that he was very conscious of the genre, in a way that I don't think I had considered yet until I got to set. Um, and like I wanted to just do everything with a kind of naturalistic, entirely actor motivated lens, but you have to, in this kind of world, really consider the genre. And it's the same for Walter Boys, really, where, you know, he would refer a lot to like horror movie timing, which was, you know, take everything that you've done and do it in double the amount of time, like slow everything down, because there's that kind of build up, that suspense that's really important to the genre that I learned about. I learned a lot about that when I was there. So yeah, Chad was a good reference point for, I guess, horror as a whole. And Ashley was obviously, she's wonderful to work with. I had a lot of Twilight questions. All my friends love Twilight, so I really had to um bite my tongue and not annoy her with all of my Alice Cullen questions. But what an iconic character, what an iconic person. Like it was a really huge moment for me to you know, kind of get to work with her on like an equal pacing, like a, you know, that was an amazing experience. Same with Sean. Sean is a very, very good actor. He's from I think Vancouver originally, and that really shines through. Like he's very Canadian in the way that he interacts with people and is very kind, very patient, and always has the time of day. So he was I learned a lot from him for sure. We have some really cool scenes together. I won't spoil anything, but yeah, I hope people enjoy it.
I
Yeah.
can't wait. I'm not like a huge horror person, but it sounds
Yeah.
really interesting, and hopefully you get to reunite with some of the cast and the director at any kind of premiere that happens. Excited to see it and for all you have upcoming. I have one more question for you, our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
That's a really good question. I think I would I'm a very citrusy girl. I have like an orange candle burning right there. I think I would want to be like a sorbet, like an orange sorbet or like a lemon sorbet or something like that, just because I want to keep that energy. I want to keep that like zinginess and that like zest for life, you know? I think that that would be what I want to be immortalized in an ice cream as, for sure. And I think it's also the yummiest, so I bring the most joy to whoever eats me. Yeah. That's my that's my answer.
That's a fantastic answer to end things off. Thank you so much, Ellie, for taking the time to chat.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. It was great meeting you for sure. So thank
Yeah,
you.
you as well. And hopefully we can catch up in the future, maybe for season 2 of Walter Boys. But until then, for all those watching, you can catch Ellie in My Life with the Walter Boys. Season 1 is out now on Netflix. So make sure to stream, tell all your friends, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.